The way the doctor broke the news to me was that there was a huge mass in his head, and his words were actually, "Your life is never going to be the same again."
The fear of being irreparably disabled or worse was definitely there.
He had 2 seizures and was effectively at that point brain dead.
The real stories of brain tumours from those that have dealt with their harsh realities.
Duncan was 20 years old. He played a lot of sport, fit, active, healthy young man. Lots of pals, and just, out of the blue, things obviously went wrong.
Ian's son Duncan was in his last year of university when his headaches began.
And over that Christmas before the February when he died, he just wasn't right, and we couldn't put a finger on it. He wasn't studying, and he then started complaining of headaches, and quickly he went to the doctor. But that was kind of the warning we got.
After visiting the GP 3 times in a space of 2 weeks, Duncan was prescribed painkillers, but the headaches only got worse.
The pain was excruciating. We went to A&E, and they recommended that he did need to go back to the GP. He did a full examination, and including an eye examination, and thought he had identified a papilledema, which was a sign of swelling behind the eye. That was the point. He was then admitted to hospital.
How do you remember that moment when the doctors told you that it was a brain tumour that Duncan had?
It was just kind of unreal, if you like. We were told that the prognosis wasn't good, but there would be a number of months. He then had seizures overnight, and he had 2 seizures and was effectively at that point brain dead.
Just 40 hours, it's completely rocked your life?
Absolutely.
A quicker diagnosis may not have saved Duncan. However, Ian believes spreading awareness could save more lives.
I think awareness is a big thing, and support for those who are affected. Better and quicker diagnosis is really important, but the science has got to find, and the research has got to make some breakthroughs.
More than 1,000 people are diagnosed each year with a tumour in the brain or central nervous system in Scotland. Across the UK, up to 2/3 of those tumours are diagnosed late in an emergency department. Opticians can play a key role in catching the cancer at an earlier stage.
Any indication of drop in vision is an indicator for us to push a wee bit further and see why that vision is dropping. It is quite rare for us to spot a brain tumour. I've been qualified 12 years and I think I've diagnosed 3, so the numbers are fairly low. So we're looking for differences in pupil size.
After a general examination, there's then an eye scan that can provide a clearer picture.
The main part we would be looking at in any suspect brain tumours is the optic nerve. If there is a mass in the brain, it swells up slightly, and it's called papilledema. That would be an automatic referral to the consultant ophthalmologist to get that scan, usually within 24-40 hours. There's a very few of them are actually a brain tumour, but it can be a sign of it.
Hayley's husband Matthew was diagnosed with a tumour just a year after their wedding. Like Duncan, he complained about headaches, but also memory lapses and issues with balance.
I would never, ever have known that there was anything wrong with him. The scan showed that it was like an orange-sized brain tumour on his front left lobe, and they said if he hadn't come into hospital that he would have died. So they wanted to straight away get him into surgery. So I had a phone call after 7 hours of kind of waiting to hear from the doctors, and they just said, "Oh, Matthew's up and having a cup of tea and some pudding." And I just couldn't believe it. He was just like a miracle. He was doing so well.
But 4 years after successful treatment, Matthew received the news that the tumour had returned.
I think we both just sort of fell to bits after that news.
And that second diagnosis happened in the middle of the pandemic?
Yeah, it was awful actually. She told us that they'd found kind of 2 small bits of growth in different parts of Matthew's brain, and then said, but we can't do anything about it because of COVID. Brain tumours do not wait. The growth can grow very quickly, and that gap of having to wait could mean Matthew's life.
Brain tumour diagnoses dropped by 24% last year compared to in 2019. Experts say diagnoses have now picked up, but are still below pre-pandemic levels.
Do you think that 6 months wait had a detrimental impact on his condition?
I think so, yeah. I think, if they could have caught it when it was much smaller, it might not have needed to then go to surgery.
Matthew made it through the surgery, but since his health has deteriorated, and 1 month ago he was moved to a hospice.
Unfortunately, I don't think Matthew's got long left, I think. But for me, I don't want him to be suffering, so I almost hope, that it's not going into months, because I want him to pass away at peace.
When people listen to Matthew's story, what do you want them to take away from it?
Brain tumours have taken Matthew away from me. It's not just that, he's got cancer, it's that his whole personality has changed. The treatments for brain tumours have been the same for almost 40 plus years. But I think that's the really difficult part is knowing that there isn't enough treatments, there isn't a cure.
It's not only better treatments, but also better diagnosis tools that would make a difference.
This is the -80-degree freezers that we store the samples in.
A group of chemists in Glasgow are working on a rapid blood test that could be key for early detection.
We can get results within an hour from the sample being within our lab. We can detect tumours down to 0.2 centimetres cubed, which is a very small tumour. If we can identify the tumour when it's early enough, then surgery would be more successful. And then if surgery is more successful, then hopefully we can increase people's lives and qualities of lives.
Brain tumour diagnoses are something that falls quite heavily on GPs. This is something that could take that strain away from them.
Unfortunately, the symptoms of brain tumours are very generic. So if we use the Discover Brain Cancer liquid biopsy prior to that, we're not only able to stream people rapidly into imaging who need it, we're also able to send people back to their GP who don't need it. So not only can we help the patients who are positive, for the patients who are actually negative, we can release that toll and they can go have other investigations to find out what is actually causing their symptomologies.
Do you think in 10 years' time we'll be looking at a different set of statistics when it comes to brain tumours?
I think things are changing. Brain tumours have been identified as a cancer that needs research. I think if we can carry on innovating and carry on researching, in 10 years' time we will see the benefit coming through.
Currently, only 12% of patients survive more than 5 years after a brain tumour diagnosis, but there are exceptions.
I started having headaches about 9 months before my initial operation, so I was 12 when they started.
Rudy visited 5 doctors and was given treatment for migraines, but when the pain became unbearable, his family took drastic action.
We just went into A&E, begged for a scan with my dad. They gave me a CT scan reluctantly, and about 30 minutes later they came back, all sheet white, just said they'd found a tennis ball sized tumour in my brain. So yeah, that moment was quite profound. But strangely, it was actually relief that I felt. This gave an actual reason as to why my pain was there and how it could go away.
Did you understand the gravity of what you were told?
So I didn't know the severity, apart from right after the diagnosis, I was rushed into a wheelchair, put into an ambulance with emergency lights flashing, and straight to the hospital, sirens on. It's like 1 second I went from nobody cared to everybody cares, this is an emergency.
Rudy then went into surgery in what was a nervous wait for the family.
I felt really guilty. It was my first emotion, just guilt of not picking up on that and not really reading the signs. As a nurse, I've known lots of people, mainly males with brain tumours, and I didn't know anyone that had survived. So I was really preparing myself for losing my son.
That must be so unimaginable as a parent.
Yeah. It was just, you were just going along in life and then you were just catapulted into this real hell of worry and anxiety. And I had 2 other children that I had to put a brave face on for, but I wasn't optimistic about the outcome.
I feel lucky. There's feelings of, why me? And I have had friends that have not been as lucky as me. At the same time, I just look at the experience as a gift. It gives me real confidence to go forward.
Do you ever think if you and your family didn't push for that CT scan, what may have happened?
Yeah, I think about that quite a lot. I think if I hadn't pushed for that CT scan, a seizure would have been right round the corner for sure. It's all about raising awareness for health professionals, because it's easy to say that, barely anyone has a brain tumour. But you've got to look at the trade-off, and you can't just ignore the real cases. This is real, and we need to do something about it.